Well, today John's going to be opening up the world of parasitic wasps and worms, so prepare yourselves for some really interesting slides and videos and information from John, so thank you very much.
Okay, so wasps and worms. Now, with parasites, I'm not going to talk about the things that attack us or our pets, you know, tapeworms and that kind of thing, but I'm going to talk about things which will attack other insects, and in the case of the parasitic wasps, because mostly they attack other insects. But the worms are something that I stumbled across, again serendipity. When I was out looking for wasps in the bush, I happened to find some fascinating worms and got a bit hooked and studied them for a wee while too. So anyway, here we go. We'll look at the wasps first. Whenever you say you work on wasps, parasitic wasps, people always think you mean something black and yellow and that stings you and is nasty. So Asian pagan wasp over here. You're familiar with those, give a nasty sting. German wasp, the first nasty one to establish here. And here's a nice big nest of a German wasp up in the roof space of a house. And Rosemary has got her hand down indicating the entrance to it where the wasps would be coming and going. We were going to try and get that one out, but we would have had to demolish a lot of the roofing iron, and even then we couldn't get it out safely. Now I mentioned down below the hunting wasps. Here's a native one, the golden hunter. Lovely brassy golden hairs on its thorax and a nice bronzy reddish colour, and it will attack large ground dwelling spiders. And if you're out walking in the bush, you do come across this. Sometimes you'll see the tussle going on of the wasp jumping and leaping around and trying to get in position to sting the spider and paralyse it, or the spider trying to run away, or even rearing up facing the wasp. Other times you'll see it dragging the spider, and if you've got the patience you can follow it back to where it's going to bury it. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much more about those, except to say I mentioned that the tarantulas even had wasps which attack them too. And in South America you can find these things, and they are rather large. And according to what I've read, the sting of one of these is the most excruciating thing you can ever be stung by. It doesn't kill you or anything, it just hurts like crazy. As you might imagine, because it's got to have venom to paralyse something the size of a tarantula. But what I really want to talk about are the parasitic wasps. These are the ones that I like the best. And these are the biggest group of wasps that we have here in New Zealand. In fact, it's the biggest subgroup of the wasps in the world. And most people don't even notice or know of their existence. Many of them are tiny. They go about doing their job, attacking their hosts with all the interesting life cycles and biologies that they have, and everyone is blissfully unaware of them. By and large, they don't sting you. There are one or two species that can, if you handle them, but they don't hunt you out. They don't sting you aggressively like German wasps to chase you away or that kind of thing. They will all be attacking and laying their eggs either inside, or not always inside, but sometimes just on the outside of the body of the immature stages of insects. So it'll be either on their host insect's egg or larva, and it could be a young, just newly hatched larva, or it might not be until the larva is fully grown. It just depends on the species, or possibly the pupa of the host. Very rarely do they attack adult insects, but there are a few that do. And most insects will have at least one species of parasitic wasp that attacks some stage of its life cycle, and most insects will have several. So from that you can probably infer that the wasps are one of the biggest groups of insects out. The beetle people used to claim that beetles were the most popular, were the most numerous. But those of us who study wasps say, bah humbug, it can't possibly be, because every beetle's got at least one parasite. Now the other thing too is even the parasites get attacked by other parasites. And there are parasites of parasites of parasites. It gets very complex. And so you can imagine the degree of specialisation that some of these things must have. It reminds me of, I forget, is it Ogden Nash's little poem, or is it Hilliard Belloc? One of those two. Big fleas have little fleas upon their backs to bite them, and little fleas have lesser fleas, and so ad infinitum. And in the case of parasitic wasp, it's a bit like that. Now, unlike true parasites, these who don't kill their hosts, If you think of tapeworms, you know, if your dog gets hydatid tapeworms in its gut, the tapeworms don't kill it. The dog or the host just gets a bit sick and debilitated, but carries the load, and it's in the parasite's interest not to kill its host. But these ones do. They always kill their host as they develop. And so a different word was coined to describe them. So sometimes if I lapse into using the word parasitoid, that's really the word I should be using. Most of the time, though, I use the more commonly word parasite. But there is a bit of a difference. And as you might expect, a lot of them are attacking pest insects, and so they actually are quite beneficial to us in ag and hort and in our gardens, controlling things that attack our veggies. The picture I've got up here is of a very small one in the top. These things attack aphids, and you can watch this little drama. You can watch these in your garden. Any plant that's got aphids on, if you've got roses, swan plants, look for these little dark coloured wasps walking around the aphids, and if you're patient, you will watch them. The female will turn her abdomen, point it forward between her legs, and approach an aphid and then just jab it. And in that quick moment of contact, she's put an egg inside that aphid. And the aphids, when they are parasitized and the wasp larva is growing inside it, become mummified like this. They sort of swell and go this coppery brown, some even black. And once the wasp has completed its development inside here, it's killed the aphid, it then chews a beautiful little circular hole. In fact, here you can see the little bit that's chewed is still attached, a bit like a lid, and out pops one of these. And you can see that really easily in your garden. They're tiny. This wasp is probably only about 1.5 millimetres to 2 millimetres long at most. But just watch for them walking amongst the aphids, particularly if you've got some aphids that look different. In this case, this whole cluster has been parasitized, but normally you'd find just a few. Now, one of the ones that I like most, and that I've been studying a bit, is this thing called Otilia. Now, this is the wasp here. And it attacks the eggs of these chaps, the cave wetters. Now, if you go out into the Waitakares, you will find loads of these if you find any of the little tunnels in the clay, and you'll find great colonies of these wetters there. You'll also find them in limestone caves, all sorts of places. Now, this wasp here, this is about 4 millimetres long, so it's quite small, and these wetters are quite big, body length of so long, and then by the time you get the legs on, about an extra this much. And we've got 8 species of them in New Zealand, and I keep looking for more new ones. And in fact, I did find a new one just the other week. Limestone caves are good for them, but I found the best places are mining tunnels. This is a great little spot on the west coast of the South Island, up in behind Shantytown near Greymouth. These are old gold mining tunnels cut into the hill. And because they're much smaller and more confined, it's easier to find the wetters and to find their eggs. Here's a little tunnel in the clay up in the Waitaks, and these little yellow dishes, these are my little pan traps, because that's how I catch them. And it's just, you know, you used to be able to buy yellow ones at the supermarket, but yellow's not very fashionable for the last couple of years. You only get purple, green and blue, which are no good. Insects like yellow. It has strong entomological magic. And I just half fill these with water, put a little drop of detergent in, sit them out in the bush, in this case around the entrance to the tunnel, because this is where the wetters are, and if there's any parasites they'll be coming in and out, and lo and behold, I can catch them quite easily that way. If I just put those traps out in the surrounding bush, I might be very lucky to catch one. And so they are very sparse and hard to stumble upon. When you do find them, you usually get them in good numbers.
Excuse
Now,
me, what's the detergent for? Why do you use
simply because a lot of little insects, if you watch them, if they just come down on water, they can sort of sit on the surface tension, and then they flap their wings and take off again. But the little bit of detergent just means the water surrounds them immediately, and they sink and drown. So it's just a way to, yeah. Now, here's a cave worker up there, and you can see this female. She's got her ovipositor, the egg-laying tube out the back, and she's quite big, and she lays her eggs down on the cave floor in the soil, crumbly stuff that's down the bottom. Now, here's 3 of her eggs up on the top. This is the top of the soil, roughly along this line. And here I've just sort of cut it away vertically. But she lays an egg, and here's one relatively recently laid, positioned vertically. So she backs up, pokes her back end down into the soil, and then she's got this extra ovipositor to give her a bit more depth, and so she can deposit an egg, and she just lays one at a time down there like that. And the question is, how the heck do those little parasites, which are only a fraction of her size, get down there to lay their egg inside this wetter egg? And this is a theme in the parasitic wasps. How do they actually reach their hosts if their hosts are concealed in some way? And the secret to this one, in Archaeotelia's case, is that she has a telescopic egg layer herself, ovipositor. It's starting to stick out of her back end here, but normally it's telescoped. The red now is pointing to the very tip of her abdomen, if she didn't have any ovipositor stuck out, and it lies right inside a full length, and then it goes up into this little projection at the very first segment of her abdomen. So it's quite long, but not only is it that long, it's telescoped 3 times inside her. Here's a couple. These are the ones I caught just a week or so ago down on the Tararuas. And this one here has not got her ovipositor stuck out. That's the end of her abdomen. You can see that little horn, which helps to give her a bit of extra length. This one here, as she's died, she's stuck her ovipositor out. So here's the tip of the abdomen. Here's the first section that's starting to be popped out. There's a second section there, also partially popped out, and then a third section here. And you can maybe just figure out the very fine strands at the tip which are splitting out. Those are the actual little things that make up the hypodermic injection thing for laying her egg. The mechanism by which they do it is similar to if you want to turn a rubber glove inside out and to get the fingers out, we sort of get a bit of air into it and then squeeze, and out it pops. And it's a bit the same for those wasps. They pump their abdomen, put pressure on the blood and fluid inside them, and it pops the ovipositor out. Then they pop a bit more. I can only pop out one thing here, but you imagine it then pops out again a second time, and then again a third time. So this is the nifty way that Archaeotelia does it, of getting a long ovipositor itself so that it can, in fact, reach the egg of Archaeotelia. Now, this is a related thing, not too closely related to Archaeotelia, but you can see it's got a horn on the very first segment of its abdomen, but look at the absurd way that it is developed and brought forward right over the thorax. In fact, you can see there's a groove in the top of the thorax here, so that when the body of the thing flexes, the horn fits into the screw, even over to the back of the head. And this is a species of wasp we do have in New Zealand. It's not a native, it's a European thing, but it is here. And its ovipositor will take up this whole space, right up to there, and then it can be popped out 3 times. So when it's fully extruded, somewhere over here. Okay, and now this wasp is tiny. It's only, maximum would be 2 millimetres, probably a bit less than 2 millimetres long. So imagine the abdomen here is about 1 millimetre, so it can pop it out about 3 millimetres, and 3 millimetres will take you over to here. So this is quite nifty. This is one of the ways that parasites have overcome the problem of how to reach a concealed host. But not all are like that. Here's a giant ichneumon parasite, and this is a northern hemisphere species that we brought into New Zealand to try and control and attack the wood wasps that go in pine trees and damage them. And its ovipositor is not held inside the body at all. It's all completely external, so it hangs out there behind it, and it's always there as the thing flies around. I'll show you some. I don't know if you can see this from here. Here's a real live one here in the box. We'll pass this around a bit later so you can see it a bit more closely. Now, the actual egg-laying tube is protected in a sheath, so it's quite thick. So there's 2 big sides of a sheath, and when she lays, she stands on tiptoes, and she guides her ovipositor down between the base of her back legs, gives it a bit of support, I suppose, and then depending on what species she is, because there's quite a lot of species of this kind of thing, and they all go for beetles or wood wasps that live in quite deep in wood. She will drill into the wood with her ovipositor, and if you look at one, I tried to see if our little magnifier here could do it, but if you look under the microscope, there's actually little barbs and ridges on the very tip of her ovipositor to help her saw her way in. Anyway, she guides it in, and as she pushes, the pressure comes from just lowering her abdomen as she gets the ovipositor further and further in. So this one here has got it down a bit further, and here's her abdomen. Here's the actual ovipositor, this very thin bit coming down in here. Down here, it's still protected by the sheaths, but as the ovipositor goes in, the sheaths are a bit redundant and they get pushed out the back, like this in this big loop. And eventually, she will have lowered her abdomen out to this kind of a position, and the ovipositor will be entirely down here in the wood, and the sheaths will be flipped out the back again. Here's a related thing, the lemon tree borer parasite. This is a New Zealand one, and you can sometimes see them in your garden, flying in the sun around bushes and shrubs, and they attack the larvae of this beetle, a native beetle too. And here's the larva inside a twig. This beetle is the thing that causes a lot of damage in your citrus trees. If you've noticed little branches or twigs of them dying and piles of dust, it's because this native beetle has attacked it. But this comes to our rescue. Now these ones are fascinating. How do they locate a larva of this inside? And you'd think, well, maybe they can feel it moving inside, it sets up vibrations. But someone's looked at some American species very closely related to this and discovered that up on the antennae they've got little infrared detectors, and they detect the infrared given off by movement even through the wood. Now, can you imagine how sophisticated it would have to be to pick up that? I mean, you and I wouldn't have a hope of detecting it, but these little wasps can. And you can see her ovipositor is not quite as long as the previous kind of wasp, but then again, she doesn't have to drill so far. She only has to get through a thinner twig. And the other thing too is these larvae can move quite fast inside their tunnel in the twig. So she's got to be quick at drilling through the wood and getting and laying her egg in one of these before it gets out of the way. Now, they don't all have long ovipositors, and I've put this one up to show. Here's one that's got a very short, jabbing type of ovipositor, and she uses it in a different kind of way. She hunts for a big caterpillar, like this. She jabs it, which paralyzes it, and then she takes her ovipositor out, and she lays an egg on the outside of the caterpillar. So this little black thing is her egg, and that egg is attached on, and it will hatch, and her larva, instead of developing inside the caterpillar, just feeds from the outside, poking its head in, sucking out the blood to start with, and then as it gets bigger it will start to consume the solid tissues. This one actually can sting you. I think because the ovipositor is short and fairly robust, it can actually pierce your skin, so if you pick one of these up, expect a sting. Nothing particularly serious, but it does happen. Now, I want to talk about a couple of species of wasps that attack white butterflies, because these, again, the drama of these things you can see in your garden if you've got the patience. And this first one is called Pteromalus puparum, and it attacks the larvae of the pupae of the cabbage white butterfly. In the top slide, this is a picture of one I took. When the caterpillar is fully grown, they often leave their host plant. So the cabbages, and these ones have been eating nasturtiums. This was on a camping ground at Karamea. You might remember this, Rosemary. And the caterpillar had actually crawled away from the nasturtiums that had gone inside the cook house in the camping ground and painted that beautiful green coloured wall. And there it was sitting there. And here's this little parasite. Now the parasite this one is no good at attacking the larvae. It has to wait for it to pupate. And so it has followed this caterpillar and it's sitting, waiting patiently for the next 24 hours until that caterpillar sheds its skin and turns into the pupa, like in the photo below. And the photo below was of a different one taken the next day, and it actually had 2 little wasps sitting on it. It's obviously only just turned into the pupa stage. It's still very fresh and very soft, and it's not quite ready yet for them to attack it, so they're still waiting for it to harden up and develop a little bit more, and then they will insert their ovipositors and lay their eggs. In this case, not a single egg per wasp, but many eggs per wasp. I did once see a video of the same species where the wasp had located a caterpillar and was sitting on its tail end, riding, while the caterpillar was wriggling along and looking for a suitable place to, as it thought, turn into its own chrysalis, not knowing that it had this hitchhiker that was going to put paid to any further development. There's that same pupa about 3 weeks later. Those are all the wasps which have hatched out of it. So they've developed inside, completely eaten it out, no butterfly. There's at least one hole being chewed up there, and they've all crawled out. So in this case, it was somewhere between 40 and 50 came from the one host. Now, the cabbage butterflies also get attacked by another one, which actually does attack the caterpillar stage, and they again will lay several eggs, many eggs, inside the one caterpillar as well when they sting it. And here's a lovely photo taken by National Geographic of inside a caterpillar, and you can see several larvae of the parasite in there. Each one, they're all getting fully grown, about the size of a grain of rice, basically. And when they start, again, they'll eat the non-essential tissues of the caterpillar first. They'll drink its blood, they'll nibble away at fat bodies, but they will leave the muscles and the gut and the nervous system intact. And those organs don't get eaten until they're nearly fully grown. I remember seeing this when I was a kid, wondering what the heck it was. It's quite gruesome to watch because the caterpillar's still alive, and here are the larvae now. Before they turn into their own pupae, they don't do it inside the caterpillar's body, they chew their way out. So each one will chew a little hole through the skin and come wriggling out. And it's quite something to see it at this stage because each of those little caterpillars is sort of waving around in a sinuous, almost, okay, if we put our own human spectacles on, menacing, it's nasty, it's macabre. It's just the way it is, really. But they will then sit there. The caterpillar's still alive. It can still move a tiny bit, but by and large it doesn't. You can see it contracting in its body. But after a day or two, it will die and just shrivel up and fall away. And each one of those little wasp larvae will spin its own cocoon with lovely yellow silk. We'll get to that in the next one. Now the thing is, I put that one in because whenever I see it, it reminds me of the Alien movies. Now you remember lovely Sigourney Weaver blasting the bejesus out of these creepy things. I'm sure the makers took their inspiration from watching parasites in nature, and they've adapted it to complex life cycles. And you remember this thing had an incredibly complicated life cycle. But the thing that I always remember is that scene where it bursts out of the chest of the victim. And seeing these things coming out of the caterpillars always makes me think of that. Anyway, that's just a little aside. I'm sure biology has inspired the movie makers. Back to our caterpillar and its parasites. Each one of those larvae makes a lovely yellow silk cocoon. So you sometimes see these cocoon clumps on cabbage leaves or in the vicinity around, because often they will crawl away from the plant. And here's the parasite itself. They're now at the stage of emerging. Here's another one. You're familiar with the green looper caterpillar. Around at the moment, eating just about every plant in your garden and your pot plants inside. The moth at the top, that's what it turns into. And in fact, that one there went to have a feed of nectar from the moth vine flower. And it's called moth vine because moth vine traps moths and its proboscis is stuck there. So that poor moth was dead when I found that. But it's the caterpillar down here that you find the parasites in. Now, here's an interesting one. Here's the parasite here. She's about 1 millimetre long. And instead of attacking the caterpillar, she actually lays one egg inside the egg that the moth lays. So she goes and finds out the moth egg, sticks her ovipositor in, one of her eggs goes in there. And of course, a wasp this size could never possibly come out of an egg that size. So what happens? That egg stays inside, the moth's egg hatches into a tiny caterpillar, and once the caterpillar has hatched, then the parasite egg divides. It multiplies many times. It's a process with the fancy name of polyembryony, which sort of makes sense if you think about it. And so one wasp egg can end up producing up to 1,000 embryos inside that tiny caterpillar. And they sit there just as little embryos. They don't develop much at all. The caterpillar, meanwhile, grows big and fat and looks like one of these big green caterpillars like this, still carrying all these little things. And they start to slowly develop, and instead of, when this thing is fully grown and it wants to make a pupa start to spin its silk cocoon, it starts, but then the parasites take over and swamp it. Yeah, there's a normal pupa, one that's not attacked, but this is what happens if it is attacked. And you can see that vaguely a caterpillar shape, oops, I'm trigger happy here. If you look closely, the caterpillar's skin is thin, and each one of these little segments here, little bubbles under its skin, is a larva of a parasite. And eventually they completely develop, go through their own pupa stage, hatch out, and so here's one of the adults that's just hatched out of this sort of mummified caterpillar. The scientists thought that this would be a very useful parasite to introduce to New Zealand to help control green loopers that attack so many vegetable crops. But when they got it established and whatnot, someone did some work and actually found that if a caterpillar is carrying parasites, it lives longer than a non-parasitized caterpillar, only by about a day and a half or two. But in those couple of days, it eats more plant material than it has in the rest of its life since hatching. So the effect of the parasite is actually, in a sense, not cutting back on the amount of damage that you're getting on your plant. You will, however, lower the numbers of moths getting through to lay more eggs in the next generation, but it's a bit of a, well, it's not clear whether it's actually beneficial or not. We'll skip from the wasps now and go to the worms. And I want to talk to you about a roundworm that I discovered, which attacks trapdoor spiders. Now here's a lovely little patch of bush. This is down in the South Island at the base of Banks Peninsula. I don't know if anyone knows Price's Valley. Anyone been there? Cute little place. And it's mostly farmed, all forest cleared, but the farmer keeps one little covenanted piece of bush on his property fenced off. And I was in there looking for my little parasitic wasps with my yellow pans. And I kept noticing often that, okay, there's the yellow dish. There's all sorts of things in here. Here's a chafer beetle. Here's an ichneumon wasp, that thing Otilia, the one with the jabbing ovipositor. There's all sorts of stuff. Here's a little ground wetter. But I found also there are an awful lot of these worms. And I didn't know what they were. I had read that wetters often get attacked by big worms, horsehair worms, but they're not worms that look like this. But I didn't know what they were. I also noticed that you'd often find a lot of spider bodies in here. Here's another one there, another one there. It's full of them. And often spider bodies looked like they were rotting and falling apart. And I didn't really twig until later. One day when I went to look at one of my traps, I found this spider here, and you can see that here's a white worm coiled up. So finally the penny dropped. The worms and the spiders were linked. Now, as luck would have it, there happened to be a man called George Poyner from California on sabbatical working in a lab just down the road, and he's the world expert on these kind of worms that attack insects and spiders. So I gave him a call, and he was utterly excited, so I had to take him out the next day to show him these things. And we ended up working on a little project together on them, and we described this thing. Now, I'll show you. What you're looking at up there now, you can see that there's a worm inside that spider's abdomen. That's just around about 40 centimetres long, and that occupied the entire abdomen of one of those spiders. So it's a bit like a piece of vermicelli. And in fact, I mean, the Italian word vermicelli, or however they say it, literally means little worms. So when you're having your next meal of vermicelli, just think of these hapless spiders and their little parasites. Yeah, right, this is a female worm, and they're always big, they're quite fat. Now, actually, if I can turn this gizmo on. Now, this spider here has a female worm, single female worm curled up inside, and the female worm's body is fairly thick, whereas the smaller and skinnier worms like this are males. Now they're much smaller, so if a spider has only got a female worm, there's only room for one worm in there. There's nothing else. There's no extra male as well or anything. But spiders that have got a male worm in them will often have several in there, up to 5, usually 3 or 4. But I have seen up to 5, and they're much smaller, and they can fit in there. Now, why you find this difference, I do not know how it works. It raises all sorts of interesting questions. Okay, trapdoor spiders are big. We've got quite a lot of them in New Zealand. Live in tunnels, usually on the bush floor. And we call them trapdoor spiders, except the place where I was, there's always an exception to every rule. The trapdoor spiders there didn't have any lids or trapdoors on their tunnels. They were just open. And so, like this one over here, and they would sit and lurk around the entrance to their tunnel, and anything that walked past would vibrate and trigger little trap lines of silk, and then the spider pounce, drag it back down. Now, they can be very long-lived, up to 20 years in captivity. Probably not as long out in the wild, I would expect. But I'll give you an idea. So, if a spider has been infected with a juvenile roundworm, and we'll get to how that might happen in a minute or two, it could take years before it actually gets up to maturity and to complete its own life cycle. Now, when a worm is infected with one of these, and the worm is fully grown and needs to carry on its own life cycle, it changes the spider's behaviour. And this is where some people have talked about the zombie spiders. It still sounds great, doesn't it? And it actually makes the spider commit suicide. Quite atypical behaviour. And this is where a little stream running through the bush is important. And in fact, my little yellow pan traps served in place of the stream. The spider goes searching for water. Now, this is something they don't do normally. They live their entire lives in their burrows. They get their water by sucking the juice and the blood out of their prey. They don't have to go out and drink. Now, the spider doesn't need to go looking for water because it's got all the water it needs from how it feeds, but the worm does. The worm cannot complete its life cycle without having access to water. So the spider's behaviour changes, it goes out searching, they fall into the stream. And if you go and look in the stream and you fossick around at the edge here amongst the watercress and the grass, there's still a lot of water under there, you can find those worms free living. So there's a free living stage. The spider falls into the water, drowns, the worm then burrows out and goes into the free living stage in the water. And they need that because although they're fully grown, they're still not ready to lay eggs yet. They haven't developed their ovaries. They need another 7 to 10 days just sitting around while the reproductive organs mature. They don't do any feeding. They've got all the food reserves in their body, but that's how long it takes. And then once mature, they actually have to molt. Like insects, they've got a very tough skin, and as they grow, they have to shed their skin and get bigger. So they'll have a final molt out in the water there, and then they'll mate and lay eggs. Here's some that I kept in the lab. These are live worms just in a plastic container with tap water, and if you just keep the tap water dripping on them for a week or so, suddenly you start to find, over here you see that here's the bit of a worm skin where it's shedded, and so the one who shed that will be, the whole worm will be shedding a skin equivalent to the length of it. This is only just a part of it. But these worms, they happily live in just tap water in a nice little knot, little ball. And you can see the difference here, big fat females here, here's a skinnier male down here. Now the question is, how do the spiders get infected? And this is where we're having to use a bit of sort of mind experiments and take some guesses. What we know from similar worms is that they have an indirect life cycle as an intermediate host. And if you go out to that stream and you collect the mayfly larvae and caddisfly larvae out of it, all the ones which are herbivorous and normally feed by grazing on algae that grow on the surface of the stones, and you take them back and macerate their bodies and look under the microscope, you'll find they contain absolutely microscopic juvenile nematode worms just floating in their body cavity, in their blood. And you can look at the adult mayflies and the adult caddisflies and do the same thing, and you'll still find the little juvenile nematodes floating in the body cavity. So they are not affecting, it seems, the biology of these aquatic insects. The insects here are basically just couriers carrying them through their own development as larvae through to the adult stage, and so then we surmise that these things then fly off and into the bush and are eaten by spiders, and as the spider sucks their juices out, the juvenile nematodes will be taken up with them. Because spiders don't eat solid food, but a little tiny microscopic nematode would be sucked in with the body fluids of these things. And then once it's in the spider's intestine, it will bore through the intestine walls and into the body cavity of the spider and then begin its process of development. So it's quite an intricate thing, and quite a lovely sort of biology to contemplate. Now, I wish we could prove all this. And in fact, I just got a phone call from a colleague at Lincoln University last week, and he said that he's got a student and they are going to go and sample these juvenile infected nematodes, or what we postulate are those, from the stream insects, and they're going to look at the DNA of those and compare it with the DNA of the adult worms, and hopefully, bingo, it will agree and we'll know that those belong to it. Now, of course, we could be barking up the wrong tree, but that's our working hypothesis at the moment. So fingers crossed that they do get DNA out of them, and it does confirm our hypothesis, which has now become a cherished belief. And I'd be horribly upset if I was wrong, but if I am, so be it. That's just how it is. So incredibly intricate world out there, and the interrelationships between the members are far more complex than you think, and the more you look at them, the more mind-blowing and staggering they sort of become.